All right, we're here with Chris Pandolfi and Andy Falco from the Infamous Stringdusters. What's up, guys?
What's up, How are you? How are you, man?
Doing well. I'm also here with Rob from Inside Out, wTnS.
Hey, good to be with you, RJ.
We're here at the SweetWater 420 Fest. You guys play in a few hours. We're excited. It's a beautiful day, great lineup. It's an awesome place to be. You guys are riding an awesome wave from my perspective anyway. You guys just won the Grammy Best Bluegrass Album. Congratulations, Laws of Gravity.
Thank you so much.
Awesome album. I remember you, Chris, telling me, and maybe it was in an interview too, just that you guys felt like Laws of Gravity was going back to sort of the roots of the Stringdusters after you did Ladies and Gentlemen and some other stuff. How does that still feel like that was a kind of...
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the most gratifying, awesome things about the whole Grammy win is that it's a self-produced record of all original music, you know. So if that's not validating, you know, and that's a hard decision to make. I mean, that's not just a foregone conclusion that we're going to self-produce. That took us a while to figure out, and I think that it's something that's really authentic to us and works for us, and, you know, but if there ever was any doubt, you know, now I feel like we're moving ahead knowing that that's definitely something that works really well. And now as we're getting ready to go into the studio again to do our next record, I think we're feeling that even more, that it's just in terms of our music that we write and how we work together as a band, we've just figured out a great synchronous way to bring the music to life that, you know, satisfies everyone and I think does best by all the songs and all the tunes. So it's cool. It's a great place to be.
And to what extent, now that you're 3-time Grammy winners, is that correct?
I wish.
2-time Grammy winners.
No, 2-time nominee. 1-time
nominee.
3-time IBMA award winners.
Okay. But to what extent now that you're a Grammy winner, do you consider playing a festival such as this, and I'm doing air quotes, slumming it?
I mean, never. This is amazing. This is, you know, we live for coming out and playing festivals like this, and you know, just the lineup is incredible, and so to be included in that is amazing. And so, no, this is so awesome.
And you're working on your next album. And one thing, RJ, we learned in the last when they were on Inside Out wTnS, I don't remember the episode numbers last fall. You can find it at osirispod.com. You can find it.
Yes.
You hold back the material.
Yes.
And wait until the album's recorded and released, and then perform it.
And then do it. Yeah, and that's as much for the audience as it is for us. Just then the show just gets this infusion of new material all at once, and it just really gives that feeling of, you know, of a mark of that we just
a chapter.
A chapter, right? And so,
and in a world where like fans will go to see, you know, they don't go to see one show a year, they're going to go to see 10 shows a year, then that makes a big difference. When the new album comes out, the show becomes this whole other thing, and it's like you gotta get back and see what's up, see what's new.
So how many we got written? How many songs? How close are we?
We have 15.
There were 15 that made the final cut.
So it started probably 20 plus, and then, you know, our system is that we do these pre-production sessions, and they're so awesome. I mean, if you ask me, it's one of the great payoffs of being in a band. I mean, that's when it's what we were doing these last couple of days, just get together, you know, get an Airbnb, in this case, a haunted castle in King of Prussia, Pennsylvania, which was awesome and weird. But
I mean, it was weird. It was so weird that I got there first, and it was so weird that I called these guys, and I was there by myself. They had 2 hours before they got there, and I had to get the fuck out of there.
Really?
And I was like, I got in the car, I drove in, and I just drove around rural Pennsylvania for about 2 hours.
Wow. So this album is gonna sound like Bill Monroe and Dracula doing like an old timey duo. But we get together, and, you know, it starts out just with guys showing song ideas and playing a song for everyone else just listening, and then we sort of compile this master list, and then things filter to the top. And then this time around, I was kind of blown away at how once we made it down to like the final cut of 16, and we had to narrow that down to, you know, 12 or 13, you know, that process can be like pretty daunting for a band, because, you know, guys have their songs that they've written, and you've got a lot invested in this material, but we were able to just so easily kind of figure out what was what and what was working. And then we take those songs, and then they go through a whole other multiple times through where we're doing the things that really just make that stuff kind of quintessentially Stringduster, and that's the cool thing about being in a band, is that you don't just have songs, but you have this whole organic, sort of sonic character and personality that brings it to life. So it's like the song is one thing, but then the delivery of the song is this whole other added layer of art, and that to me is really one of the payoffs of being in a band. So we're pretty there. We've got the stuff like pretty dialed in. We probably have a few small tweaks left, but pre-production is done until we hit the studio.
Wow.
So,
as Chris knows, one of my favorite things to do is see the Infamous Stringdusters. One of the things I love about seeing you guys is you hear almost everyone sing and get out front. Does everyone bring ideas to the table when you start with that many songs? I know that.
Yeah, everybody, all 5 of us write, and all 5 of us bring, what we feel are our best, material, our best songs to the band, and that's the thing about that process is, and why. What Chris was saying, why it's so difficult. Sometimes when you get down to that you have 15 songs, 16 songs, only so much time to record, only so much space that you could do. But by the time you get to that point, you don't want to cut anything. That's the hardest part. At that point, you've already gone through the stuff that you're like, that's not really going to work for this reason, or that's not going to work for that reason. Now you're doing all these songs that you really love, and you have to, but we try to also add those to the live repertoire too, and there's always place for those songs, and so you get to play them. But
You mean the ones that just missed the cut?
Yeah. I think the ones that we did this time around are definitely good candidates for some live material.
So I'm going to make a fish analogy because
that's what you do.
Because that's what I do. But they worked with Bob Ezrin on their past few records, and he was the guy who hurt everyone's feelings and said, sorry, this song's not making the cut, right? Like he told them, like, this song's not making it, this song's not making it. When you guys are mostly working on your own together, like, is it more of a group decision, or is it like, do you put it up for a vote, or does it not really get to a vote? I'm curious.
This
how that
time
works.
we didn't even have to really do a vote, and we will vote on some things, and we're very democratic, in the way that we sort of figure out our business and what's next. But the artistic realms as a whole, trying to decide what hotel to stay in is different than trying to decide, whose song's going to go on an album. So there's a much deeper decision-making process that's based on, I think a lot of things that we've figured out about this band in terms of who needs to get what out of what aspects of the music, and like, I don't sing lead on the albums, but I always have some heady instrumental thing that's sort of trying to push the envelope and be rooted in bluegrass, but and that's like my thing, and I get to do that on the album, and all these guys have multiple songs, and all of those songs have all these different sections that are also little vehicles for us to do our thing and make our music, and it's more than the sum of the parts kind of thing when it's all said and done. But it's pretty amazing to see how each guy, has an outlet that's so perfectly suited to what he's created over the years in terms of artistry, writing, whatever it is. And it just seems like we've figured out this great balance where everybody gets to do their version of that, and between the shows and the albums, there's so many opportunities to make and share our music that, I feel like we're all just grateful that, it worked out like that. And then we get to the shows and we're psyched. We get to do our thing. Everybody feels like they're contributing what they're really good at, and that's ultimately what makes the music good and what makes people react, I think.
And I got to give Chris credit, because this is usually when we would try to pick the songs, like what you were talking about, it might be in an email that goes around and votes and all this stuff, and that's what we've done in the past, and it's worked fine. But this time we've already figured that out, and we had. Chris had an idea, and he put each name of the song on an index card, and then we laid it all out, and we were able to sort of move them around on the table and sort of categorize. And almost in a way, it was kind of like doing a storyboard for a movie, you know. And we were able just to in real time, put it together, and we just stood around this table, and within I think about 10 minutes, we had figured out what songs were going to be on the album and what the order of them is going to be. Probably is going to
a thing that we previously would have agonized over deeply, but
that's an enormously good sign.
And what also we're trying to do this. We're I'm not gonna let the cat totally out of the bag, but we're trying some cool concept stuff with this record that is forcing us to figure out some of the sequencing stuff ahead of time. And we're gonna probably have a pretty like normal version of the record with songs tracked out, but then also working on a sort of different version of it that reflects a lot of stuff that we've learned how to do live, which is transition between songs, play off of each other in the moment, and figure out how very spontaneously to get from A to B. It's not just about getting to that next song. It's about creating something meaningful in the meantime that stands on its own and makes whatever came before and after better too. And we got to that place as a band, so we're like, well, why don't we try and capture some of that on the album? So we're working on some different things this time, concept-wise, but I think essentially it really is similar to Laws of Gravity in the way that it's just our songs again, self-produced and sort of our
And it's going to win a Grammy.
I mean, let's not jinx it, but
that's the thing, and when you're making, when you're what we used to think of as two separate processes, making a record and doing a live show, I feel like we've gotten closer and closer to fusing those two mindsets and actually going into the studio and capturing a real performance of not just documenting the music but really trying to get deep with the songs and capture the energy of the band, and the essence ultimately.
And
of
it's
the
an
band.
intangible the listeners can feel.
Absolutely.
I really believe
Yeah,
that.
for sure.
Dylan used that methodology.
I mean,
for
he
you.
always, I used to work at Sony Studios in New York, and that you would get, the tapes would come in, and I realized that he recorded everything, the vocals and everything live. He put a band in the studio, and you can hear in between the takes and everything, them talking and discussing, but like
It's like you're listening to a show.
right, but you just would do, a bunch and there'd be variations on each one, and then they might have done 10 takes of a song, but then they found exactly, and that was a band, that was a studio band. With us, we have the advantage that we play music together all the time, and so it becomes very natural for us to just go into the studio and be able to, once we feel the songs and have played them a little bit, just be able to go in and capture a performance of the song.
Do you guys feel like with the Grammy win and the kind of success you guys have had, do you feel like there's less pressure on you now? I mean, as part of the... Or more like this, because what you described seemed like you guys are really, like Rob said, that's remarkable that you're able to kind of sort through things and agree on them and move forward. Is that, I don't know, less pressure or more, I guess?
I mean, definitely not more pressure. I mean, we won the Grammy, so we've that's not going to change. So
You're not worried about topping yourself.
I mean, that was such a surprise and an outside the box thing, and I think that a lot of the really cool feedback that we got was that from other bands that are sort of in the quote unquote, kind of jam band world, that is not a world that gets a lot of love from NARIS or the Grammys. But that doesn't mean that there aren't a lot of amazing musicians doing really great stuff, and we certainly put ourselves in that category. And I think that was one of the cool and most gratifying pieces of feedback was that, we sort of brought that hardware home to a community of musicians who were so awesome and supportive, and we heard from just like everyone from people in our world, getting texts from the String Cheese guys and the Green Sky guys to O'Teal, and just
How about Bela?
I didn't hear specifically from Bela, but that guy's got so much freaking hardware on the shelf. I don't think that's as big a deal to him, but like that's an interesting comparison. Like, he's a guy who just lives in this integrity music world, and gets a lot of recognition from the Grammy world, whereas Fish and Cheese and these kind of bands are out there making some of the most compelling music and throwing these events that are so formative and communal, and that stuff is really important, but that's not what brings home awards, you know? And so we're out there and we're trying to do it all, make the best music that we can, but we're also so committed to that idea of community, and those are the types of fans that we have. And so the kind of support that we got was like just awesome and kind of overwhelming. And I think in light of that, you know, it definitely doesn't feel like there's any more pressure. If anything, I feel like, and this was one of the really fun things about it, was we won the award and then we had one more leg of shows, like 10 shows, and it was just like, they were so fun. You could just feel the energy from the fans, from the band, and it was just like there was this tangible just thing.
Joy.
Yeah, man, it was really noticeable. And you know, as a band, you crush along just day after day, and you don't have many moments where the whole thing comes into perspective, and you have this moment where, you know, you just feel as a group, the five of us, it was so awesome and kind of meaningful just to be like, wow, we stayed the course and we're doing something that's actually, you know, mattering to people. And so all those things together, I think, combined to sort of just, it's just been a great thing that, you know, has empowered us more than anything.
Have you gotten any feedback from any unusual and surprising artists or places? Post Grammy, I mean.
I don't know. I can't think of anything that was really unusual, but there was just a lot of it which was really, you know, amazing and almost and emotional, I think, too, for me, and showed the weight of it. And I think that
justifies life decisions.
Yeah,
all the things.
and you know, like Chris was saying, I mean, it becomes this stop and smell of the roses moment where you're really, as an artist and as a band, just powering through and trying to evolve musically. And that's all you are really trying to do. And when you get this kind of a thing, you know, an award like that, it makes you stop and realize, wow, that, you know, this is pretty cool. But then ultimately, then you end up like now we're back getting ready for a new record, and you know, it's not the focal point, okay, Grammys or anything like that. You get back to just being an artist and trying to again evolve as musicians and as a band.
So, no, I think we probably have time for a couple more. I have two more specific questions, but that's just because I could talk to these guys all day.
We got to talk about Osiris, right?
I will at the end, but do you have any other specific things?
The king of the house in Pennsylvania. Any more specifics on that? See, here's the thing. Songwriters always talk about how the songs are sometimes just out there in the ether. So when you're in a house like that, it seems like if you could put up with the weirdness, Andy, that maybe you'd get overwhelmed even with inspiration. There might be songs in there.
No, the house itself for the creative part was great. The sleeping part, not so much.
Give us examples.
Okay,
happened?
well, all right. How about this?
Here we go.
So when the guy let me in, he said, "All right," and he was this guy he was an Eastern European guy, and he was like, you know, and he had the accent and everything, and he was like, you know, don't worry, there's you know some. You know, the raccoons, when people aren't here, there's raccoons. You can hear them in the roof and stuff. And I was like, all right. And he goes, usually they're not here when there's people, but I did hear them today. So you might hear them. If you do, don't get startled. And I thought,
don't feed them.
Okay. And then but that night, it was insane. There were raccoons,
baby raccoons or just raccoons?
I know, all kinds of raccoons. A city of raccoons. And they are just scraping away.
Oh my God!
All night, and you can hear them in there, you know, in the walls all night. And then they went out and partied for a while. You went out for a while, and then they would come back in, and maybe a little. At that point, they're a little tipsy from whatever the garbages they went through, and you can hear them stump. But I mean, it was heavy. And then but you know, he warned me about, oh yeah, don't get started. And he said also, don't get startled. There was this giant statue of Mary, I guess. Was that Mary?
I don't even know.
Oh,
I don't know.
saw that picture.
It was
you
like
guys
an
posted.
angel.
It was
Yeah.
out, man.
Yeah.
It was
He
out.
said, you know,
scary.
don't get startled because, you know, he pointed to this thing, and I didn't really know what he meant. And he pointed to the statue. Well, that was the room I was sleeping in. But in fact, what happens is there's this motion detector. So it'll be dark, and then you go past the motion detector, and there's this beam of light that turns on and shines right on this angel's face looking down at you. I mean, the angel's about 12 feet tall. And in the middle of the night, it startled the hell out of me, actually. But
and the raccoons are
the
going,
raccoons,
and
I just, there was not a lot of sleep happening for me, but creatively,
we got good work.
It was amazing. It was an amazing house built in like the early 1800s originally, and it just was this quirky space. It was really weird, but like it is great to work in a space like that because you do, the polar opposite of like a conference room with fluorescent lights. You go to a place that has some vibe. It definitely puts it rubs off in the music, I think.
And at the risk of stating the obvious, any people out there forming a band, Tipsy Raccoons, good band name.
Tipsy Raccoons.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
It
might be the name of this album.
I hope it.
Do I get points then?
Yeah, you do.
You got to tap into the King of Prussia mythology.
That's right.
So, Andy, a question for you, because I don't think I've ever asked you this, but so my favorite Stringduster song that you play is Hitchhiker.
He's talking to Andy.
The solo, Andy Falco. The solo is amazing.
Thank you.
And on that, it's not really... it just doesn't sound like bluegrass to me in terms of straight bluegrass. So I'm curious if you could talk a little bit just about your guitar influences, just as broadly or specifically as you want, because I know that all of you guys bring totally different influences, but I just really want to know like what kind of brought you to where you are guitar wise.
Well, I grew up, playing electric guitar, and I got really into the Grateful Dead, but I grew up listening to all kinds of music, Beatles and stuff. But when I was playing guitar, it was really the influence of Jerry Garcia and the Grateful Dead. I have an older brother who was kind enough to bring me to sign me out of school and take me to my first Dead show in 1986.
Where?
And at Hartford Civic Center.
I was there.
Wow.
The Jack Straw opener.
Yeah.
He gave me tapes and I was into that, but then going to see them, I think that was really, and I was playing some music, but I used to play a lot of that music and my brother would, jam with my brothers. And then, from there it was figuring out that, listening to in New York, to the jazz station or blues show or something and hearing an old blues song. It was like Samson and Delilah or something, done by
Reverend Gary Davis.
Reverend Gary Davis. And so I remember listening to it going, oh, that's so cool. Reverend Gary Davis doing like, a Grateful Dead song. How awesome. And then I was like, as it came out of my mouth, I was like, oh, wait a minute, and so if you go backwards from the Grateful Dead, you start to find country music, you start to find blues.
Bromberg.
And then David Bromberg was really the first influence for me, getting it as I got deep into blues and I got really into Michael Bloomfield. But that, before Bloomfield, I got into David Bromberg, and because I was into B.B. King, and someone in my hall in college, that's a common story with Bromberg, right? Said, hey, here, check out this guy, David Bromberg. And so I was coming at him from the blues angle, but, then getting, exposed to flat-picked guitar and mandolins and fiddles and all this kind of thing,
Quick fun fact. One thing George Harrison and B.B. King have in common. When they met David Bromberg, they each sang one of his songs to him.
Wow.
That is all you need to know about David Bromberg.
He wrote a song with Bromberg.
With Harrison, yeah.
Yeah, he sure did.
The Hold Up.
Yep, the Hold Up.
Yeah,
That's
there's
right.
a whole story. Well, listen to Timeless Music Podcast, episode 1. It's all in there. Go ahead, RJ.
So last question for you guys. So I find it fascinating. I've talked to you about this, Chris, that you guys all, or some of you live in different places and you're, is that an advantage, disadvantage? Are there pros and cons? I'm just curious because you guys come together to practice, record, and tour mostly, right? I'm sure you see each other socially and whatnot, but is that like, are you guys used to that now, or is it still a challenge?
That's been our style for a good while now, and it's just the way it is, the way it has to be. I mean, when you're starting a band, you really do need to be in the same place because you need to be able to hop in the van together and drive and
coexist.
And play a gig for, $300 that you can't buy plane tickets from, for 5 band members and 6 crew members. But then you get to a point where, I think as a band, one of the most important mantras, and this is the advice that I give to young bands if I'm producing or just trying to help people out, is just stay together as a band. And if you can design sort of the way things work around that mantra, stay together, then great things come from that. And for us, that was the decision to stop living for some imaginary thing in the future and just move to where we wanted to be. So for Andy, that was Long Island. For me, I moved out to Denver, and everybody, including our crew, are all settled in places that they love to be. Thankfully, we're at a place as a band where we can afford to fly everyone in. But, we have to figure out how to make that work too. But that's a thing that's really worth it. It might cost us a few more bucks in the long run. But then honestly, once you get to touring nationally, you don't really play any one place any more than any other place. So
you're buying plane tickets anyway.
Yeah. So it is a little bit of a trade-off, but it also, like I said, I think falls in line with a mentality that every young band should adopt, because, some would say that we're better than these other bands, but the truth is we're just, if we look around at all the bands that were around when we started, we're one of the only ones that are left. Mm-hmm. And I think that is because we've figured out, musical and personal ways not just to coexist, but to really be kind of symbiotic. And that involves, just laying out our lives in a way that we want. And it's great. We're all where we want to be, and we get together, and we're sort of refreshed and out of each other's hair for a while. And I love it. I look forward so much to every trip these days. And this past tour was the most fun I think we've ever had as a band. And I just woke up every morning feeling like, man, I'm just so psyched to get on stage tonight and see what happens. And that is, we're just really, really grateful for that.
And I will say that when we all lived in Nashville, we would get into a van maybe for 4 or 5 weeks at a time. And when we pull back into Nashville and get to our cars, we'd all look at each other and go, man, I don't want to see you for at least 2 weeks. And you're okay. And we'd all go home, and then inevitably it'd be about the next night.
It'd be that night at the station.
Right, we'd be hanging out at the station, all together. Hey, how you doing, man? Hey, cool. And chilling out, and that's just. But not much has changed really, except we just get to go. We go home to different places, but we spend a lot of time, and we love being around each other. So that's.
I just want to jump in one thing on the longevity, though. Let's not gloss over the fact that it's the strength of the songs, and you're known for that, and that's before any friggin' Grammy. You were known for that, and that's why so many people are happy about the Grammy.
Thank you.
Yeah,
thanks.
I mean, we're into that. I mean, we're all about our songs, and like I say, that's the most gratifying thing. And we work on all of it, but that part has definitely gotten many, many hours over the years. So to get that recognition is awesome.
Yeah. And you guys, when I see you live, I've seen you at the beginning of tours, one-off festivals. It doesn't, there's never any rust really that I've ever seen. You guys, when you come together, you guys are ready to play always, which is really impressive and really fun for the listeners. So
thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Congratulations on the
much.
Grammy, and thanks for joining us. Hope you guys have an awesome time out here at SweetWater 420 Fest. It's a beautiful day.
Thanks for having us.
Always good to have you in Atlanta.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Make it more frequent.
Yes.
Distance